Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Silas Mercer wiped grease-stained hands on a rag that had seen better days, just like his marriage. The persistent tick of the clock on the garage wall reminded him it was past closing time at Mercer Auto Repair. He'd promised Jolene he'd be home by 7. It was nearly 8 that the drive took exactly 12 minutes through Elbridge, Oklahoma. His father had opened a shop in '85, and when lung cancer took him 5 years ago, his last words to Silas had been, "Never walk away from your responsibilities." So Silas didn't. Not from the shop, not from the town, not from his marriage, even as it crumbled around him. The porch light was off again. Jolene knew he hated coming home to darkness. "You're late." Her voice cut through the dim living room. She sat in the armchair by the window, glass in hand, phone screen illuminating her face with an unnatural glow. Transmission rebuild on the Miller boys' truck. Told him I'd have it done today. Silas hung his keys on the hook by the door. Always someone else's needs before mine. She took a long drag off her cigarette, blowing smoke toward the ceiling fan that barely turned. "It's called work, Jolene. It's how we afford this place." "This place." She laughed, a hollow sound. "You mean this trap? This, what did you call it? Our starter home? 12 years later, and we're still starting." Silas walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge. Empty except for condiments, beer, and a carton of milk he knew had gone bad days ago. "I saw Maggie Thornton today," Jolene said, appearing in the doorway. Her husband just made regional manager at that insurance company. They're building a house in Meadow Creek Estates. Silas chewed silently. "Remember when we talked about building? Remember all those magazine clippings I saved? The wraparound porch I wanted? I remember." His voice was low. "But you're happy just fixing other people's problems, aren't you?" She moved closer, wine on her breath mingling with cigarette smoke. "Never reaching for anything more. Just existing. Someone has to keep things running. God, you sound just like your father." She spat the words like poison. "Duty and responsibility. What about dreams, Silas? What about ambition? We can't all be stars, Jolene. Some of us have to stay grounded." Her eyes narrowed. Once, those eyes had made his heart race. Now they just made him tired. "That a dig about my acting, isn't it? Go ahead. Mock the only thing that ever mattered to me. I never mocked your acting. I paid for those classes in Tulsa. I drove you to auditions. For community theater. For local commercials. You never believed I could make it bigger. You never tried to make it bigger," he said, immediately regretting the words. Her hand came up fast. The slap stung, but not as much as the truth behind his words. "I gave up everything for you," she hissed. "Everything." Silas put his plate in the sink. "I'm going to bed." "That's right. Walk away. That's what you're good at." He stopped, turned slowly. "I've never walked away from anything in my life, Jolene. Not one damn thing." "No." She approached him, smelling of wine and desperation. "Then why are you still here?" "Because it's not for love. We both know that died a long time ago. I made vows." His voice was barely audible. "Vows." She laughed again, that same empty sound. "You and your precious vows. Your father would be so proud." Silas felt something dangerous rising in his chest. Something he needed to walk away from before he couldn't. "I'm going out," he said, grabbing his keys from the hook. "That's right. Go cool off. Go hide in that garage of yours. It's the only thing you've ever really loved anyway." The night air was thick with summer heat. Cicadas screamed from the trees, a soundtrack to his anger. He got his truck, a '98 Ford he'd rebuilt himself, and just drove. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Jolene. He ignored it. Headlights flashed in his rearview mirror, coming up fast. Silas pulled right to let them pass, but the car didn't pass. It stayed right behind him, high beams now blinding in his mirrors. He squinted, waved his arm out the window for them to go around. The engine behind him roared. As he took the curve on Miller's Creek Road, the car rammed him from behind, his truck fishtailed. Hands gripping the wheel, he fought for control. The car hit him again, harder. The world spun. Metal crunched. Glass exploded. His body jerked against the seatbelt. There was a moment suspended in time when Silas saw everything with perfect clarity. The guardrail coming too fast, the drop beyond it, Jolene's words echoing in his mind. You're pathetic. Then darkness. The sharp scent of antiseptic pulled Silas toward consciousness. Every breath sparked pain somewhere new. There he is, a woman's voice said. Coming back to us. Something beeped steadily nearby. Hospital. He was in a hospital. Silas forced his eyes open. A woman in scrubs stood by his bed, checking in 4-line. Water, he managed, the word barely a croak. She held a straw to his lips. The cool liquid was the best thing he'd ever tasted. You've been through quite an ordeal, Mr. Doe, she said to Amar. Doe, Mercer, he corrected, wincing at the pain in his jaw. Silas Mercer. The nurse, her badge read E. Carver, looked surprised. Well, that's helpful. You had no ID when they brought you in. Car accident out on Millers Creek Road. That's 3 days ago now. 3 days. Silas tried to sit up, but pain shot through his ribs and left shoulder. Easy there, Nurse Carver said. You've got 4 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, fractured jaw, concussion, and enough cuts and bruises to win a bar fight. You're lucky to be alive. My wife, he said. Jolene Mercer. Someone needs to call her. Something crossed Nurse Carver's face. Hesitation. We'll take care of notifying your family, Mr. Mercer. Right now, you focus on resting. She adjusted his 4 and left. Silas stared at the ceiling, fragments of memory surfacing. The argument. The car behind him. Not passing. Following. The impact. Not an accident. Night fell. No Jolene. No calls. No visitors. Just Nurse Carver checking his vitals every few hours. Has anyone called my wife? He asked around midnight. Nurse Carver's hand stilled on his wrist where she'd been taking his pulse. The police tried the number on your phone. There was no answer. The next afternoon, a social worker visited him. Mr. Mercer, I need to ask you about your home situation. My home situation? I need to know where my wife is. Ms. Richards adjusted her glasses. That's part of what I'm here about. When the police went to notify your wife of your accident, a neighbor told them that Mrs. Mercer had been telling people you'd left her. For another woman. The words hit harder than the car that had run him off the road. What? According to the neighbor, a Mrs. Adeline Winters, your wife, has been saying you abandoned her 3 days ago. The timing coincides with your accident. That's a lot. His voice was a growl. We fought. I went for a drive to cool off. Someone ran me off the road. Ms. Richards made notes in her folder. The police report indicates a single vehicle accident. Your truck went through a guardrail. Because someone ran me from behind. Twice. Did you see who it was? Headlights. High beams. That's all. Silas tried to organize his scattered memories. Check my truck. There'll be paint from their car on my rear bumper. I'll mention that to the police, she said, but her tone suggested she was humoring him. After Ms. Richards left, Silas lay in the gathering darkness, pieces fitting together like a jigsaw puzzle from hell. Jolene had been acting strange for months. Phone calls that ended when he entered a room. Late nights with friends he'd never met. The distance that had grown between them, wider than the Grand Canyon and twice as deep. And now this telling everyone he'd run off with another woman while he lay broken in a hospital bed. Why? What could she possibly gain? Unless she'd wanted him gone. Unless she'd known something was going to happen to him that night. The car that hit him hadn't been random. It had followed him, waited for the right moment on that dark, winding road. Jolene's words whispered through his memory again. You're pathetic. Had those been meant as goodbye? The next morning brought a surprise visitor. Miss Adeline Winters, his next-door neighbor for the past 10 years, shuffled into his room, clutching her oversized purse. Oh, my heavens, she gasped when she saw him. Silas, they told me you were hurt, but I had no idea. Miss Adeline. Good to see you. The elderly woman pulled a chair close to his bed. When the hospital called to verify who you were, I nearly fainted. We all thought, well, what would Jolene saying? That I'd run off with another woman. Silas finished for her. Miss Adeline's cheeks flushed. It didn't sit right with me, not one bit. You're not the type, I told everyone. But Jolene was so convincing with her tears and carrying on. Tell me what she's been saying, Miss Adeline. Please. Well, she said you two had a terrible fight. That you told her you'd been seeing someone from out of town. A younger woman you met at some car show in Tulsa. Said you've been unhappy for years and couldn't pretend anymore. Miss Adeline shook her head. Then she said you packed a bag and took off, saying you weren't coming back. Each word was like another fracture in Silas's already broken body. And people believe that. She was mighty convincing, dear. Crying at church, accepting casseroles from the ladies' auxiliary. Half the town's been by to comfort her. But you didn't believe it. Miss Adeline straightened her spine. I've watched you mow my lawn every Saturday for 10 years, Silas Mercer. Clean my gutters each spring. Check my furnace before winter. Men who do those things don't abandon their responsibilities overnight. Thank you for that. Now, what really happened? I'm guessing it wasn't a joyride with some floozy. Someone ran me off the road that night. After Jolene and I fought. Miss Adeline's eyes widened. Deliberately? But who would? She stopped, understanding dawning. Oh, Silas. I need to know more, Miss Adeline. Who has Jolene been spending time with? Has anyone new been around the house? The old woman hesitated. There is someone, yes. A man. Drives one of those fancy sports cars. Always wears those tight shirts that show off his muscles. She wrinkled her nose in distaste. He started coming around about 3 months ago. Usually during the day, when you'd be at work. Did you get his name? Lennox something. Owns that new gym over on Maple Street. Fitness Empire, I think it's called. Lennox Barrow. Silas had met him once, briefly, at the hardware store. Slick smile, expensive watch, the kind of handshake that was more about showing off grip strength than greeting. How often did he come by? 2, 3 times a week. Always left before you be home. Miss Adeline looked pained. I should have said something. Not your fault. Silas struggled to keep his voice steady. Miss Adeline, I need to ask you something important. I need you not to tell anyone you've seen me. But why? Shouldn't people know the truth? They will. But right now, I'm safer if certain people think I'm... He couldn't bring himself to say dead. If they think you're still missing, she finished for him. Because if someone tried to hurt you once, they might try again. Later that afternoon, Nurse Carver Lowe, as she asked him to call her, stopped by during her break. Your facial swelling's going down, she observed. Another week, and you might almost look human again. Had a visitor today. My neighbor. Lowe's eyebrows shot up. The one who told police I'd abandoned my wife, yes. Turns out she was just repeating what Jolene's been telling everyone. And now she knows the truth. Some of it. Silas shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. She also told me about my wife's visitor. A man named Lennox Barrow. Owns a gym in town. Lowe's expression darkened. Boyfriend, looking that way. Suspect. Silas nodded. Sports car. Comes to my house when I'm at work. Dating my wife, who's now telling everyone I've left town. Pretty circumstantial. Miss Adeline said his car is red. Dark red. Like the paint that would be on his truck's rear bumper. If the police had bothered to look, Lowe checked her watch. I'm about to get back. But I've been thinking about what happens when you're discharged. I got a plan for that. Sort of. Care to share? My cousin Boone, ex-Marine, lies outside town. Keeps to himself. If I can get word to him, is he someone you trust? Silas considered the question. He and Boone had grown up together, more like brothers than cousins. After Boone came back from Afghanistan with a limp and nightmares, he'd withdrawn from most people. But not Silas. With my life. Give me his number. I'll reach out, arrange something. Silas hesitated. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Lowe's expression softened slightly. Let's just say I recognize the look of someone who's been betrayed by the people who should have protected them. She straightened her scrubs. Besides, my ex tried to kill me too. I guess I'm a sucker for solidarity. With that bombshell, she left, leaving Silas to wonder what kind of guardian angel had been assigned to his case. Boone's place was exactly what Silas had expected. A small cabin set back from the road, surrounded by trees, with a workshop out back that looked better maintained than the house itself. It's not much, Boone said as he helped Silas up the porch steps. But no one comes here uninvited. Inside was sparse but clean. A main room with a wood stove, kitchenette along one wall. A hallway led to what Silas assumed were bedrooms and a bathroom. You'll take my room, Boone said, leading him down the hall. I'll use the couch. I can't put you out like that. Boone fixed him with a look that brooked no argument. You've got 4 broken ribs and enough metal in your shoulder to set off airport security. You're taking the bed. The room was military neat. Bed made with hospital corners. Nothing on the surfaces except a lamp and a book. No photos. No personal touches. Alone for the first time in days, without hospital staff checking on him, Silas felt the full weight of his situation descend. His wife had betrayed him in the worst possible way. Not just with infidelity, but with attempted murder. She was telling everyone he'd abandoned her, turning his life into a lie while he lay broken in a hospital bed. Exhaustion hit him like a wave. He eased himself down onto the pillow, careful of his ribs, and was asleep within minutes. He woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, disoriented, he thought he was home. Then the pain in his ribs reminded him of reality. Boone sat at the small kitchen table when Silas emerged from the bedroom. "Afternoon," he said, sliding a plate across the table. "You've been out for 14 hours. Between bites of food, the first real meal he'd had in days, Silas explained everything. The failing marriage, the fight, the car running him off the road, Jolene's lie about him leaving, Lennox Barrow. Boone listened without interruption, his face giving away nothing. When Silas finished, he sat back, coffee forgotten. "So what's your play here?" Boone finally asked. "I don't know yet. Need to gather information first. Figure out exactly what they're up to. They think you're dead, or still in the hospital. Either way, they think I'm out of the picture." Boone nodded slowly. "That gives us an advantage." "Us? You think I'm sitting this one out?" A rare smile crossed Boone's face. "Someone tried to kill my cousin. That makes it my business." Relief flooded through Silas. He wasn't alone in this. "First things first," Boone said. "You need to heal. Get your strength back. Can't fight a war from a hospital bed. I can't just sit here while they—" "You can and you will." Boone's tone left no room for argument. "1 week. Focus on getting mobile again. Then we start reconnaissance." That week was one of the hardest of Silas's life. The pain from his injuries was constant. Simple tasks like showering or dressing became battles. But true to his word, Boone was there, helping without making Silas feel helpless. They established a routine. Mornings for rest and medication. Afternoons for gentle movement to keep muscles from atrophying. Evenings for planning. "We need eyes in town," Boone said on the 5th night. "Someone we can trust who can tell us what Jolene's up to." "Miss Adeline," Silas suggested. "My neighbor. She's already keeping my secret. Too risky. She's right next door. If Jolene gets suspicious." Boone shook his head. "Anyone else?" Silas thought about his friends. Hugo, who he'd known since high school. They'd worked construction together before Silas took over his father's auto shop. Hugo now ran a small welding business. Hugo Martinez. He's solid. The welder. Boone nodded approval. "Good choice. His shop has security cameras, doesn't it?" "Yeah. He installed them after a break-in last year." Silas saw where Boone was going. "Those cameras cover the street where Lennox's gym is." "Exactly." The next day, Silas called Hugo from Boone's landline. "Martinez Welding," Hugo answered, his voice a deep rumble. "Hugo, it's me, Silas." Silence. Then, "Holy shit. Where are you, man? Everyone thinks you've—" "I know what everyone thinks. It's not true. None of it. I never believed it," Hugo said quickly. "Not for a second. You running off?" "No way. I need your help, Hugo. But this stays between us. No one can know we talked. Not even my sister. Whatever you need, Hamano. You know I'm there." Silas explained the situation in brief, clinical terms. The accident, the betrayal, the need for information. "That piece of shit Lennox," Hugo spat. "I never liked the way he looked at her when you weren't around." "You saw them together? Before all this?" "Few times. At the grocery store. Gas station. Nothing obvious, but there was something there. Another piece of the puzzle." "How long had this been going on?" "Your security cameras," Silas said. "Do they still cover Maple Street?" "Yeah. They catch the intersection." "What?" "I need footage from the night of the accident. And anything you can get on Lennox's movements since then." Hugo was quiet for a moment. "You think he tried to kill you?" "I know he did. I just need proof. I'll get it for you." "And Silas? Be careful, man. If they did this once, I know. Keep this between us, Hugo." "You got it. I'll call when I have something." 3 days later, Boone returned from town with a package. Inside was a USB drive and a note from Hugo. Figured it out. Be safe. They watched the footage on Boone's laptop. Grainy security camera video from the intersection of Main and Maple, showing the street in front of Lennox's gym. The timestamp matched the night of Silas's accident. There, Boone pointed to the screen. That's his car, right? A red sports car, pulled out of the parking lot at 9:17 p.m., heading in the direction of Miller's Creek Road. That's it, Silas said, his voice hollow. That's the car that ran me off the road. The footage continued. The same car returned at 10:03 p.m., parking behind the gym. A man got out Lennox, unmistakable even in the poor quality video. He paced, phone to his ear, gesturing animatedly. He's calling someone, Boone said. Want to bet it's your wife? Anger, cold and sharp, sliced through Silas. Not just at Lennox, but at Jolene. Had she been waiting for that call? Waiting to hear if her husband was dead. There's more, Boone said, clicking to the next file. This footage from the following morning showed Jolene's car pulling into the gym parking lot. She got out, rushed inside. 30 minutes later, she emerged with Lennox. They embraced not as friends, but as lovers before driving away in separate cars. The day after, Silas murmured, while I was in a coma. The final clip was from 3 days ago. Lennox loading duffel bags into his car, driving away. He's gone, Boone said. Skip town, leaving Jolene to deal with the fallout. Silas wasn't surprised. Men like Lennox never stuck around when things got complicated. So what now? Silas stared at the frozen image of Lennox's car. The proof was there. His wife and her lover had tried to kill him. The question was, what would he do about it? Now, he said, we find out exactly what they're planning, and we build our case. Lo Carver knocked on Boone's door exactly 3 weeks after Silas's discharge from the hospital. She stood on the porch, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, her face unreadable. You're a hard man to find, Silas Mercer, she said when Boone let her in. Silas, sitting at the kitchen table, managed a small smile. That's the idea. How'd you find us? Boone asked, his tone neutral but his posture tense. Relax, soldier. Lo set her bag down. I'm a nurse, remember? I can read a patient chart. Plus, Silas talked about you in his sleep. She turned to Silas. You look better. Feel better. Thanks to you. She waved away his gratitude. I brought supplies. Fresh bandages, antibiotics, the good pain meds. She began unpacking her bag onto the table. And information. Silas straightened. What kind of information? The kind nurses aren't supposed to share with non-family members. She pulled out a file folder. Your complete medical records. Proof of your injuries. Expert opinions that state, in no uncertain terms, that your accident was unlikely to be just an accident. How did you get this? Boone asked, eyeing the folder. Let's just say I know people who owe me favors. People who believe in justice more than bureaucracy. She pushed the folder towards Silas. There's more. Your wife came to the hospital 2 days ago. A jolt went through Silas. Jolene was there? What? Asking questions about you. About whether anyone matching your description had been admitted the night of the accident. Said she was worried you might be hurt somewhere. 3 weeks later? That's convenient timing. That's what I thought. Especially after telling everyone you'd run off with another woman. Lo folded her arms. Something spooked her. Silas exchanged a look with Boone. Lennox is gone. Her boyfriend. Lo raised an eyebrow. Gone where? Don't know. But he packed up and left town about a week ago. Haven't seen him on any of Hugo's security footage since. Lo pulled up a chair. So Loverboy bails. And suddenly she's worried you might be alive somewhere. She's covering her bases, Boone said. If someone starts asking questions about Silas's disappearance, she can say she tried to find him. Smart, Lo conceded. Evil but smart. Silas thumbed through the medical file. This could help build a case. That's the idea. Lo produced a thermos from her bag and poured herself coffee. So what's the plan? Please tell me it involves making both of them pay. Lennox is gone, Silas repeated, but not forgotten. As for Jolene, he closed the file. I'm still gathering information, building a complete picture. You need to know why. Lo guessed. I need to know everything. How long they were planning this. What they hoped to gain. Who else knew. And then Silas met her gaze. And then justice. Later, as Lo prepared to leave, she handed Silas a small flip phone. "Werner, my number's programmed in. Call me when you're ready to make your move." "Why are you helping me, Lo?" "Really?" She shouldered her bag. "Because everyone deserves a second chance at life. Even those of us who have to die a little first to get it." After she left, Silas sat alone in the growing darkness, turning the phone over in his hands. A lifeline to a woman who understood what it meant to lose everything and rebuild. Boone returned an hour later with groceries and news. "Ran into Shelby at the store. She says your wife's getting desperate. Try to rush those property transfers through." "Why the rush?" "Word is she's planning to sell the house. Move somewhere bigger. Using your insurance money." "What insurance money?" Silas asked, confused that Boone's expression darkened. "The life insurance policy you apparently took out last year. $200,000. The revelation hit Silas like a physical blow. "I never took out a life insurance policy." Shelby checked. "Policy was opened 11 months ago, in your name, with Jolene as sole beneficiary. Signature looks like yours. She forged it. The pieces clicked into terrible place. That's why they needed me dead. Not just gone dead. And with no body found yet, she can't claim it. Hence the sudden concern about where you might be." Silas's hands clenched into fists. The betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined. Months of planning. Forged documents. A calculated plot to profit from his death. "How much more evidence do we need?" he asked, his voice tight with controlled rage. "We've got the security footage showing Lennox the night of the accident. We've got the medical reports saying your injuries were consistent with being forced off the road deliberately. We've got the life insurance policy with a forged signature." Boone counted off on his fingers. "It's enough to take to the police. And risk Jolene running? Or them not believing me again?" Silas shook his head. "No, we need more. What do you have in mind?" "I need to talk to my sister, to see how deep this goes." The man who returned to Elbridge 5 weeks after his death was not the same man who had left it. Silas Mercer still walked with a slight limp, still bore scars on his face and deeper ones in his soul. But there was something else about him now, a watchfulness, a hardened edge that hadn't been there before as he sat in the passenger seat of Boone's truck, baseball cap pulled low, beard neatly trimmed but still concealing much of his face. They were parked behind Hugo's welding shop, in the blind spot of security cameras, waiting. "You sure about this?" Boone asked, not for the first time. "Hugo's solid, and we need a base in town." Silas checked his watch. He should be closing up now. On cue, the back door of the shop opened. Hugo emerged, lighting a cigarette, eyes scanning the parking lot with habitual caution. Silas stepped out of the truck. "Hey, stranger." Hugo's head whipped around, cigarette dropping from suddenly slack fingers. "Holy shit." He moved forward, arms outstretched, then stopped, uncertain. "Silas? Man, is that really you?" "In the flesh. What's left of it?" Hugo closed the distance between them, pulling Silas into a careful hug. "Damn, brother. You had me worried when you went quiet. Had to be careful." "Still do." Inside the workshop, among half-finished metal projects and the lingering scent of welding flux, Silas explained their situation and needs. "You want to use my place as a base?" Hugo confirmed. "For how long?" "As long as it takes," Silas replied. "I need somewhere in town, somewhere Jolene would never think to look. She's been here, you know, after the memorial, asking if I'd heard from you, if I thought you might have reached out before you left." Hugo made air quotes around the word. "Played dumb. Told her I was as shocked as everyone else." "Good. Keep doing that. As far as she knows, I'm either dead at the bottom of some ravine or living it up with a mystery woman in Tulsa." That night, unable to sleep in his new headquarters on a cot in Hugo's back office, Silas thought about the woman he'd married, the woman who had plotted his death. When had it changed? When had love curdled into resentment, then hardened into something capable of murder? His phone buzzed the burner Lo had given him. "You settled?" Her text read. "As much as I can be," he typed back. "In town now. Base at Hugo's. Progress. Don't do anything stupid." He smiled despite himself. Define stupid. Getting yourself killed for real this time. Not planning on it. Good. Call if you need medical attention. or a voice of reason. Will do. Thanks, Lo. He set the phone aside, strangely comforted by the brief exchange. Lo, Hugo, in a small circle of allies when his world had collapsed. It wasn't much, but it was something to build from. The courthouse in Elbridge was a red brick building from the 1930s, stately but small like the town itself. Silas approached it from the side entrance, dressed in clothes he'd borrowed from Hugo, a maintenance uniform complete with cap and toolbox. Remember, Boone had said before dropping him off a block away, 10 minutes. In and out. Shelby's waiting. Inside, the corridors were cool and quiet on a Tuesday afternoon. Silas kept his head down, maintenance cap pulled low, limping slightly toward the records department. Shelby Diaz was alone at her desk, exactly as planned. She gestured toward the door marked Archive Room. Inside the windowless room, surrounded by filing cabinets and the musty smell of old paper, Shelby threw her arms around him. Jesus, Silas, she whispered. Seeing you in person, it's really true. All of it, he confirmed, setting down the toolbox empty except for the papers he'd need to take with him. Shelby pulled back, studying his face. You look different, and not just the beard. Nearly dying changes a man. She nodded, not pushing further. About everything you asked for. Property records, business filings, bank transfers, everything I could access without raising flags. She handed him a manila folder from her desk drawer. Jolene's been busy. Started moving money from your joint accounts the day after your disappearance. Put the house in her name only. Filed paperwork to become executor of your estate. On what grounds? No body was found. I haven't been declared dead. She's claiming abandonment. Says you told her you were never coming back. So she needs control of the assets to survive. Shelby's expression hardened. It's bullshit, and her lawyer knows it, but they're pushing it through anyway. Her lawyer, Martin Greaves, sleazebag from Tulsa, specializes in these kinds of cases. She hesitated. He's expensive, Silas. The kind of expensive Jolene couldn't afford on her own. Lennox, Silas guessed. He's bankrolling this. That would be my guess. But here's something interesting. Shelby pulled out another document. Fitness Empire, Lennox's gym. It's mortgaged to the hilt. 3 loans against it in the past year. And guess who co-signed the most recent one? Taken out just a month before your accident. Jolene, Silas said, already knowing the answer. Bingo. Using your joint assets as collateral. Without your knowledge, I'm guessing, without a word. The betrayal went deeper than he'd imagined. Not just an affair, not just an attempt on his life, but a systematic looting of everything he'd built. There's more, Shelby continued. The life insurance policy? It was taken out 11 months ago, but the signature. She pulled out a copy. Compare it to your signature on your driver's license renewal from last year. Silas studied the 2 signatures side by side. Similar, but the insurance document signature had subtle differences, loops that were too wide, a slant that was slightly off. Forged, he confirmed, and not very well. Any decent handwriting expert would catch it immediately. Silas slipped the documents into his toolbox. Shelby, this is invaluable. Really. As Silas prepared to leave, Shelby touched his arm. There's something else you should know. Your sister was in here yesterday, asking about your death certificate. Death certificate? But without a body. Exactly. I told her it couldn't be processed yet. She seemed, I don't know, relieved. It was strange. Relieved how? Like she'd been holding her breath and could finally exhale. She asked how long it would take to declare someone dead without a body. I told her 7 years, typically. She smiled, Silas. Actually smiled. Hope flickered in Silas's chest. She doesn't believe I'm dead. I don't think she does. And I don't think she wants you to be. The knowledge that his sister might be coming around, might be questioning Jolene's narrative, gave Silas a surge of energy. He needed to reach Wren somehow, to let her know the truth without endangering his plans. One last thing, Shelby said as he reached the door. Jolene's throwing a Labor Day barbecue at your uncle's ranch next weekend. Everyone's invited. She's calling it a celebration of life. My life. That's how she's framing it. A chance for everyone to come together and remember you. The audacity was almost admirable. A woman who had tried to have him killed, hosting a party to remember him while she spent his money and sold his property. A celebration of life, Silas repeated, a plan beginning to form. Interesting timing. What are you thinking? Shelby asked, recognizing the look in his eyes. I'm thinking it might be the perfect time for a resurrection. The sun beat down on the cemetery with the relentless intensity of an Oklahoma August. Silas stood beneath an oak tree at a safe distance, baseball cap pulled low, watching the small gathering at his father's grave that it was the 5th anniversary of James Mercer's death. Silas had never missed visiting the cemetery on this day until now. But someone else hadn't forgotten. Wren knelt by the headstone, placing fresh flowers in the small metal vase embedded in the ground. Beside her stood Jolene, dressed in black, a picture of solemn grace. The perfect daughter-in-law, the perfect widow playing both roles simultaneously. Through binoculars, Silas could see Wren's lips moving, talking to their father, as she always did on these visits. Jolene placed a comforting hand on Wren's shoulder, the gesture so convincing it made Silas's stomach turn. When they were gone, Silas approached his father's grave. The headstone was simple granite, just as James would have wanted. James Mercer, 1952 to 2020. Beloved father. Honest man, honest man. The word struck Silas anew. His father had lived by a straightforward code. Work hard, keep your word, take care of your own. He'd expected the world to operate by the same rules and had been repeatedly disappointed, but never deterred. What would you do, Dad? Silas murmured, crouching to adjust the flowers Wren had left. If you knew what she did, what they planned. He could almost hear his father's voice, practical and unbending. The truth always comes out, son. Always. Just make sure you're on the right side of it when it does. As he walked back toward where Boone waited in the truck, Silas's phone buzzed. A text from Hugo, SS in shop, asking questions. SS, Silas's sister. Wren was at Hugo's shop. Inside, the shop was quiet except for the faint sound of Hugo's radio playing classic rock in the background. Silas moved cautiously through the main workspace toward the office in the back. Voices drifted through the partially open door. Just can't believe you would do that, Wren was saying, her voice thick with emotion. It doesn't make sense, Hugo. You knew him better than anyone, except maybe Boone. Did he ever say anything? Give any hint he was unhappy? Never, Hugo replied. That's why I couldn't believe it when Jolene started telling everyone he'd run off. She found texts on his phone from some woman in Tulsa. Said they'd been planning it for months. Did you see these texts? Hugo's voice was carefully neutral at a pause. No, Jolene said she deleted them. Couldn't bear to keep reading them. Convenient. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just convenient that the only evidence of Silas having an affair is something only Jolene saw, then deleted. You think she's lying? Wren sounded defensive, but there was a note of uncertainty beneath it. I think there are a lot of things that don't add up. Why would Silas run off with another woman, then drive his truck off a cliff the same night? The police said he probably fell asleep at the wheel. He was upset, not thinking clearly. Silas Mercer has been driving those roads since he was 16. Knows every curve, every dip. And he wasn't drinking, you know. He stopped after your dad died. Silence. What are you really asking, Wren? Hugo finally said, I don't know. I feel like I'm missing something. Like there's a piece of this story I can't see. Silas's heart ached at the confusion in his sister's voice. She was searching for the truth, even if she didn't know what questions to ask. Did you ever wonder, Hugo said carefully, why no body was found? The ravine is deep. They said he could have been thrown clear, or animals might have, or he might not have been the truck when it went off the road. Wren's voice sharpened. What are you saying, Hugo? I'm not saying anything. Just asking questions. The same ones you came here to ask, I think. Another long silence. Then, Wren's voice, barely audible. I dream about him. Almost every night. He's trying to tell me something, but I can't hear him. Maybe you should listen harder. Maybe. The sound of a chair scraping. I should go. Jolene's expecting me for dinner. Wren. Hugo's voice stopped her. If you ever need to talk, or if you ever hear anything that doesn't make sense, you come to me. Anytime, day or night. Thanks, Hugo. I will. Silas retreated silently to a storage closet as Wren exited the office. Through the slats in the door, He watched his sister pause, looking around the shop as if sensing something. For a moment, her eyes seemed to fix directly on his hiding place. Then she shook her head and left. Miss Adeline's porch swing creaked softly as she rocked back and forth, a glass of sweet tea perspiring in her gnarled hands. Beside her, Silas sat in silence, baseball cap and sunglasses obscuring his features from any passing neighbors. "It's good to see you up and about," she said finally. "Last time in that hospital bed, I wasn't sure you'd make it." "Almost didn't," Silas admitted. "But I'm stronger than they gave me credit for." "They?" Miss Adeline spoke the word like it tasted bitter. "Your wife and that muscle-bound peacock she's been running around with. You've seen them together?" "Recently. Not him. He lit out weeks ago. But she's been busy as a bee, that one. In and out at all hours. Important phone calls on the porch where I can't quite hear. And that sister of yours, following her around like a lost puppy." Silas leaned forward. "Wren? She's still staying with Jolene?" "Most nights, yes. Though I've noticed something lately." Miss Adeline sipped her tea thoughtfully. "She started watching your wife. Not like before, not with that blind trust. More calculating like. Listening hard to those phone calls. Asking questions that make your wife snippy." Hope flared in Silas's chest. "What kind of questions?" "About that life insurance, for one thing." Overheard that conversation clear as day. "If Silas didn't tell you about the policy, how did you find it?" "Your wife didn't like that one bit." "What did she say?" "Some nonsense about finding the paperwork in your desk drawer." "But your sister's smart girl, that one," she said, "but all his important papers were in the fireproof safe, and you didn't have the combination." Miss Adeline clucked her tongue appreciatively. "Your wife turned white as a sheet, then red as a tomato. Made some excuse about you giving her the combination in case of emergencies." Silas absorbed this information, piecing it together with what he already knew. Wren was starting to see through Jolene's lies, starting to ask the uncomfortable questions. "There's something else," Miss Adeline continued. "Something I should have told you earlier, but I wasn't sure what to make of it." "What is it?" "The night you disappeared, after that fight with Jolene. I couldn't sleep. My arthritis was acting up something fierce. I was sitting right here on this porch, trying to get some relief from the night air." She pointed to her neighbor's house, Silas's house. "I saw Lennox's car pulling around 11:30. He and Jolene in the front seat, arguing." Silas stiffened. "What time did you say?" 11:30, thereabouts. I remember because the late news was just ending on my TV inside." Silas had been in the hospital by then. Unconscious, broken, his truck at the bottom of a ravine on Millers Creek Road. "Did you hear what they were arguing about?" Miss Adeline shook her head. Not clearly, but his voice was raised. Angry. "I caught phrases like 'supposed to be clean' and 'complications.' Jolene was crying or pretending to. Hard to tell with that one." "What happened then?" "They went inside. Lights on in your bedroom for about an hour. Then he left, driving faster than he should on a residential street." She patted Silas's hand. "I should have told the police, I know. But by the time I heard about your disappearance, Jolene had already spun her tale about you running off with some woman. It didn't fit with what I'd seen, but—" She trailed off, apologetic. "It's okay, Miss Adeline. You're telling me now. That's what matters. There's one more thing." She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a small key. "I found this on my front lawn the next morning. Recognized it right away. It's the spare to your shop. The one your daddy had made for me, so I could water the plants when you two went fishing." Silas accepted the key, turning it over in his palm. His father's keychain, a small metal fish that had been his lucky charm. Silas always kept it in his truck. "Must have fallen out during the struggle," he murmured. "But when they searched my things afterward, I've kept it safe, knowing someday you'd be back for it." Miss Adeline's eyes were sharp despite her age. "You're coming back, aren't you, Silas? Properly, I mean, not just these secret visits." "Labor Day," he confirmed. "At my uncle's ranch. The gathering Jolene's organizing." Miss Adeline's face lit up. "Oh my, what I wouldn't give to see her face. You'll have front row seats if you want them. Try and stop me." She chuckled, then grew serious. "What about your sister? Are you going to warn her beforehand?" Silas had been wrestling with this question for days. "I want to, but I'm afraid she'll tell Jolene or give something away. From what you're saying, she's already suspicious. Maybe that's enough for now." Trust your instincts, Miss Adeline advised. They've gotten you this far. As Silas prepared to leave, Miss Adeline gripped his hand with surprising strength. Your father will be proud of you, Silas, not just for surviving, but for fighting for the truth. James never could abide a liar. The mention of his father brought a lump to Silas's throat. Thank you for saying that. One more thing, she called as he stepped off her porch. That key, it's not just to your shop, it's to your life. Don't lose it again. 2 days before the Labor Day gathering, Boone arrived at Hugo's shop with news. His face, usually impassive, showed a rare excitement. Got something, he announced, dropping a plain white envelope on the workbench where Silas was inventorying their evidence. What is it? Letter meant for Jolene. Intercepted from her mailbox this morning. Silas raised an eyebrow. You're stealing mail now. Technically, it's still your mailbox too, Boone said with a shrug. Besides, desperate times. The envelope had no return address, just Jolene's name and their house address written in a hurried scrawl. Silas opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting unmistakably Lennox's, matching the notes they'd found in his office. Jay, things have gone bad here. Carson's men found me. Had to run again. Need money now. The insurance claim, push harder. Tell them whatever they need to hear. Once we have the cash, we can disappear for good. Meet me at the place we talked about on Friday. Come alone. Oh, Friday, Silas said. That's tomorrow. Boone nodded. And the Labor Day gathering is Saturday. She's planning to meet Lennox, then host my memorial barbecue the next day. Silas shook his head, amazed at the audacity. Where's this meeting place, I wonder? Could be anywhere. A hotel, a rest stop, the gym after hours. An idea formed in Silas's mind. What if we could trace this meeting? Follow Jolene. Find out where she's going. Risky, Boone cautioned. If she spots us. Not us, Silas interrupted. Hugo's got those GPS trackers he uses for his tow truck business. Small, magnetic, real-time tracking. Boone considered this. Could work, but we'd need to get it on her car without her noticing. I think I know who can help with that. An hour later, Silas sat in Boone's truck outside Miss Adeline's house, watching as the elderly woman chatted animatedly with Jolene over the fence that separated their properties. From this distance, he couldn't hear the conversation, but Miss Adeline was gesturing toward her garden, apparently asking for help. Jolene checked her watch, clearly impatient, but nodded. Southern hospitality or the appearance of it winning out over her obvious desire to be elsewhere. As the two women moved toward Miss Adeline's prized rose bushes, Hugo slipped from the shadows beside Silas's house. In seconds, he was at Jolene's car, bending low, then back on his feet and walking casually away. Mission accomplished. Trackers in place, Hugo confirmed by text 20 minutes later. Strong signal. We're good to go. That night, Silas hardly slept. Tomorrow, Jolene would lead them to Lennox. The final piece of the puzzle would fall into place. And then, on Saturday, at the gathering meant to memorialize him, he would emerge from the shadows and reclaim his truth. Friday dawned clear and hot, the late summer sun relentless even in the early hours. Silas, Boone, and Hugo gathered around Hugo's laptop, watching the blinking that represented Jolene's car. She's on the move, Hugo announced as the dot began traveling east on Main Street. They followed at a safe distance. 3 vehicles staggered to avoid detection. Boone in his truck, Hugo in his work van, Silas riding with Lo in her nondescript sedan. Jolene headed for the highway, then south toward Tulsa. The mid-morning traffic provided cover as they trailed her through the outskirts of the city, then into a neighborhood of aging motels and fast food restaurants. Lucky Star Motel, low red as Jolene's car, turned into a parking lot. Charming. They parked across the street, watching as Jolene checked the area before hurrying to a ground floor room at the end of the building. She knocked in a pattern 3 quick, 2 slow, then was admitted inside. Now we wait, Silas said. They didn't wait long. Less than 20 minutes later, the motel room door opened. Jolene emerged first, followed by a man Silas instantly recognized despite the baseball cap pulled low over his face. Lennox. There he is, Lo murmured. Lennox looked thinner than in the gym photos, his expensive clothes replaced by jeans and a plain t-shirt. He carried a duffel bag, which he tossed into the trunk of Jolene's car before climbing into the passenger seat. They're leaving together. Silas observed as Jolene's car pulled back onto the main road. The caravan resumed, tension mounting as Jolene drove toward the outskirts of Tulsa, then onto a rural highway heading west back toward Elbridge. But Jolene didn't drive all the way back to town. Instead, she turned onto a narrow side road, then into a long driveway leading to a small cabin set back among trees. Johnson's fishing cabin. Silas recognized the place immediately. I fixed his boat motor last spring. He said he hardly uses it anymore except during bay season. Looks empty, Lowe observed as Jolene parked beside the cabin. No other cars. Perfect hiding spot, Silas agreed. Remote, but close to town. Somewhere Lennox can lay low until after the gathering, after Jolene secures the insurance money. They watched from the road as Jolene and Lennox entered the cabin, the door closing behind them. What now? Lowe asked. Silas checked his watch. Now we know where he'll be during the gathering. We can have the police pick him up while everyone's at the ranch. Or we could confront him now, Boone suggested. Catch them both together, get it all on record. Silas considered this. No, tomorrow at the gathering is better. More witnesses, more impact. He looked at the cabin, knowing his wife and her lover were inside, planning their escape. Let them have one more night of thinking they've won. The morning of the Labor Day gathering arrived with a perfect blue sky and the promise of late summer heat. Silas stood in Hugo's workshop, staring at his reflection in a small mirror. The bruises had faded completely. The scar on his forehead was still visible but less angry. His beard, neatly trimmed now, changed his appearance just enough to give him pause. The man looking back at him was both familiar and strange. Silas Mercer, but harder, more watchful, changed by betrayal and survival. Ready? Boone asked from the doorway. As I'll ever be. The plan was set. Hugo had already left for the ranch, ostensibly to help with setup, but actually to scout the location and confirm arrangements. Boone would drive Silas, arriving after most guests were present. Lowe and Shelby would be there as guests, Lowe as Hugo's date, Shelby simply as herself, a courthouse employee known to most in town. Miss Adeline had her own role to play, ensuring Jolene remained the center of attention at the critical moment. Nervous? Boone asked as they climbed into his truck. Not about facing Jolene, Silas replied. About Wren. About what this will do to her. Boone nodded understanding. She's stronger than you think. And the truth is better than living in a lie, even when it hurts. They parked on the road half a mile from the ranch entrance, waiting for Hugo's signal. Through the windshield, Silas could see cars lining the long driveway leading to the main house and barn. The gathering was well attended, just as Jolene would have wanted. More witnesses to her performance of grief, more people to validate her version of events. His phone buzzed with a text from Hugo. All set. Most guests here. Jay holding court by the barn. W helping with food. Enter through back gate from Max Effect. Boone started the truck. Showtime. The back entrance to the ranch led past the old bunkhouse, now used for storage, and directly to the main courtyard where the gathering was centered. As they approached on foot, Silas could hear the murmur of conversation, occasional laughter, the sound of a country song playing through speakers at a normal Labor Day barbecue. Except it was meant to memorialize him. Boone paused at the edge of the courtyard, hidden by the bunkhouse wall. You're sure about this? Silas nodded. Absolutely. Then I've got your back. No matter what happens in there. They bumped fists, a gesture from their childhood that felt right in this moment of reckoning. Moving to the corner of the building, Silas scanned the crowd. There was Hugo, by the drinks table, pretending to listen to Old Man Jenkins's fishing stories while actually watching for Silas's arrival. Lowe stood nearby, carefully positioned to observe both the entrance and Jolene. And there was Jolene herself, the center of a small group by the barn. She wore white, a tasteful summer dress that managed to suggest mourning without being overtly funereal. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup subtle but flattering. She looked beautiful, Silas had to admit. Beautiful and completely false. As he watched, Miss Adeline approached Jolene's circle, leaning heavily on her cane. Right on cue. The plan was in motion. Jolene turned toward the elderly woman, her expression a mask of solicitous concern. People around them quieted, perhaps sensing the moment had significance. Miss Adeline said something Silas couldn't hear from this distance, but whatever it was, it made Jolene step forward, addressing the gathering more broadly. This was at the moment Jolene would speak about him, about their life together, about his supposed abandonment and death. The perfect time to shatter the illusion. Silas stepped out from behind the bunkhouse, walking slowly but steadily into the courtyard. For several seconds, no one noticed him. Then Hugo looked up, his expression carefully controlled despite the moment they'd planned for weeks. Like ripples in a pond, awareness spread outward from where Silas stood. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Someone gasped. Rin, setting down a bowl of potato salad at the buffet table, looked up at the sudden silence. Her eyes found him last, widening in shock, the bowl slipping from her fingers to shatter on the concrete. The crash seemed to break a spell. People began to murmur, to point, to stare openly. Silas, is that? My God, he's alive. Through it all, Silas kept walking, his eyes fixed on one person only. Jolene had frozen mid-gesture, her perfect mask slipping to reveal naked shock. All color drained from her face as she stared at the husband she'd left for dead. The husband who now stood before her, very much alive, with the truth written in his eyes. Time seemed to slow as Silas walked across the courtyard. Each face he passed registered shock, confusion, disbelief. Neighbors he'd known all his life. Friends he'd shared beers with. Family members who had apparently accepted Jolene's lies without question. But it was Rin's face that cut deepest. His sister stood paralyzed, surrounded by shards of the dropped bowl, tears already streaming down her cheeks. Her expression cycled rapidly through disbelief, shock, joy, and then as her eyes darted between him and Jolene, a dawning horror. She knew. In that instant, she understood what his appearance meant, what Jolene had done, and finally, Jolene herself, the perfect, grieving, almost widow, caught in her own web of lies. Her face had gone from shocked white to sickly gray. One hand clutched at her throat, the other reached blindly behind her for support. Someone whispered, "It's a ghost." Another voice corrected, "No, he's real. He's alive." Silas stopped in the center of the courtyard, directly facing Jolene. The music had cut off. Even the birds seemed to have gone silent. "Hello, Jolene," he said, his voice carrying in the unnatural quiet. "Sorry to interrupt. I heard there was a gathering in my memory. Thought I should attend." A nervous titter ran through the crowd, quickly silenced that Jolene's shock was transforming, her quick mind searching for a way out. "Silas," she breathed, her actor's training kicking in. She took a step toward him, arms outstretched. "Oh my God, you're alive. You're really alive." She moved as if to embrace him. Silas stepped back, his expression cold. "Don't touch me," he said softly. "Don't pretend this is a happy reunion." Her arms dropped. "I don't understand. Where have you been? Everyone thought you were dead." Silas finished for her. "Yes, that was the plan, wasn't it?" Whispers rippled through the crowd. Jolene's eyes darted around, assessing the damage, planning her next move. "What are you talking about?" Her voice rose slightly, playing to the audience now. "Silas, you disappeared. Your truck went off Miller's Creek Road. The police said no one could have survived that crash. Yet here I stand. Where have you been all this time?" she demanded, a hint of righteous anger entering her voice. "Do you have any idea what I've been through? What we've all been through?" "I've been recovering," Silas replied evenly, "from injuries sustained when someone ran me off the road that night. Someone who meant to kill me." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Silas saw Rin push through to the front, her eyes wide, her body trembling. "What are you saying?" Rin asked, her voice breaking. "Silas, what happened to you? I'd like to know that too." Uncle Ray stepped forward, his weathered face confused but supportive. "Boy, you look like you've been through hell." "I have," Silas agreed. "Starting the night my wife and her lover tried to kill me." The accusation hung in the air like a thunderclap. All eyes turned to Jolene, whose face had frozen in a rictus of shock. That's absurd, she stammered. I don't know what happened to you, but you're obviously confused. Maybe the accident affected your mind. No accident, Silas cut her off. And my mind is perfectly clear. He turned to address the gathering directly. Some of you heard I ran off with another woman. Some heard I died in a tragic accident. Both stories came from the same source. He pointed at Jolene. Both were lies. Silas, please. Jolene tried again, tears forming in her eyes, real or manufactured. It was impossible to tell. You're scaring me. Let's go somewhere private and talk about this. No more private conversations, Jolene. No more secrets. It's time everyone knew the truth. Boone stepped forward then, a laptop in his hands. We have proof, he announced, setting the computer on a nearby table. Security camera footage from the night Silas's truck went off the road. Jolene's eyes widened in genuine fear now. What is this? Some kind of ambush? I won't stand here and be accused of attempted murder. Silas finished for her. That's exactly what you're being accused of. You and Lennox Barrow. At the mention of Lennox's name, Jolene flinched visibly. A damning reaction missed by no one. Lennox? Wren repeated, confusion in her voice. The gym owner? What does he have to do with this? Everything, Silas said. He's the one who ran me off the road that night. And he did it with Jolene's knowledge and consent. The crowd erupted in shocked exclamations. Miss Adeline thumped her cane for attention. I saw them, she called out, her elderly voice surprisingly strong. Saw them arguing in her car late that night, after Silas had already been taken to the hospital. Lennox saying something went wrong, that it wasn't clean like it was supposed to be. Jolene's head whipped toward Miss Adeline. You nosy old. She caught herself, but too late. The mask had slipped. Show them, Silas told Boone. Boone connected the laptop to a portable projector they'd set up earlier. An image appeared on the side of the barn, grainy security camera footage showing Lennox's distinctive red car heading toward Miller's Creek Road just before Silas's accident, then returning with visible damage to its front end. That's Lennox's car, someone in the crowd confirmed. The same car I saw returning to Jolene's house that night, Miss Adeline added. This doesn't prove anything, Jolene protested, but her voice had lost its conviction. So Lennox was driving in the same area? That doesn't mean... We have more, Silas interrupted. Much more. The life insurance policy taken out in my name 11 months ago with a forged signature. The systematic transfer of our assets into your name alone, starting the very day after my disappearance. The mortgage on my father's shop that I never signed for. The loans against Lennox's gym with my name co-signed, also forged. With each accusation, Jolene seemed to shrink, her confident facade crumbling. And let's not forget this, Silas nodded to Boone, who switched the projection to the surveillance photos found in Lennox's office. Silas at a shop. Silas at home. Silas at the gas station. Photos taken by someone watching him, planning. They were stalking me, Silas told the stunned crowd. Planning the perfect moment, the perfect accident. I don't know anything about these photos, Jolene insisted, desperate now. Lennox must have I wasn't part of. Then how do you explain this? Silas gestured to Boone again, who projected the final piece of evidence. The note in Jolene's handwriting asking what would happen if Silas fought for the house, the shop. Lennox's damning reply. Some problems solve themselves. Trust me. A horrified silence fell over the gathering. Even those who might have wanted to believe Jolene couldn't ignore the evidence mounting against her. Wren pushed through the crowd to stand directly before her sister-in-law, tears streaming down her face. You told me he abandoned you, she said, her voice breaking. You cried on my shoulder, made me hate my own brother. Wren, I can explain. Jolene began. Explain what? Wren shouted. How you tried to kill him. How you lied to everyone. How you used me to sell your story. I never wanted to hurt you, Wren. You have to believe me. I don't have to believe anything you say ever again. Wren turned away from Jolene, moving to Silas's side, where she belonged. Her hand found his squeezing tight. Let him finish, she told the crowd. Let him say what he came to say. Jolene looked around wildly, seeing support falling away on all sides. This is insane, she tried one last time. You can't possibly believe I would try to kill my own husband. Wouldn't you? A new voice entered the conversation. Lowe stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. I'm Eloise Carver, trauma nurse from Tulsa General. I was there when they brought Silas in, broken and barely alive. His injuries were consistent with a vehicle being forced off the road. Not an accident, a deliberate act. And who the hell are you to make that judgment? Jolene snapped, her polished veneer cracking further. Someone who knows the difference between accidents and attempted murder, Lowe replied calmly. And someone who's been helping Silas gather evidence while you've been trying to claim his life insurance and sell off his property. Jolene's eyes darted around the courtyard, searching for an escape route, for any sympathetic face. Finding none. Fine, she said finally, her voice dropping to a dangerous register. You want the truth? Here it is. Yes, I was seeing Lennox. Yes, I wanted out of this dead-end marriage, this dead-end town. But I never asked him to hurt you, Silas. That was all his idea. When he told me what he'd done, I was horrified. Yet you let everyone believe I was dead, Silas pointed out. You held a memorial in our backyard. What choice did I have? Lennox said if I told anyone the truth, he'd kill me, too. A pathetic lie. And from the murmurs in the crowd, no one was buying it. That's not what this says. Shelby spoke up, holding up a printed copy of Lennox's letter to Jolene. This letter, which you received yesterday, shows you were still actively planning to meet Lennox, to join him once you secured the insurance money. Jolene blanched. Where did you get that? You're going through my mail now. It's still my house, Silas said quietly. My mailbox. Jolene's face transformed then, desperation giving way to cold anger. Your house. Your mailbox. Your shop. It's always been about possessions with you, Silas. Things. Never about dreams or ambitions or becoming something more. No, Silas corrected her. It's always been about honesty. About keeping your word. About not betraying the people who trust you. Trust. She laughed bitterly. You never trusted me to be more than just the mechanic's wife. Never believed I could succeed at anything beyond decorating your little kingdom. I supported every dream you ever shared, Jolene. Paid for acting classes, drove you to auditions, worked extra hours to buy the camera equipment when you wanted to try directing. What I didn't support was lies, manipulation, murder. The word hung in the air between them, stark and undeniable. You can't prove any of this, Jolene said, but her voice lacked conviction. She knew the evidence was damning. Actually, we can. A new voice joined the confrontation. Sheriff Baker pushed through the crowd, two deputies behind him. The sheriff's weathered face was grim as he surveyed the scene. Got a call from Miss Adeline this morning, he explained. Filled me in on what was happening. Asked us to be here, but hang back until we'd heard the whole story. He nodded to Silas. Glad to see you're alive, son. Sheriff, this is all a misunderstanding, Jolene began. Baker held up a hand. Save it. Mrs. Mercer, we've heard and seen enough. Deputies already picked up Lennox Barrow at Johnson's fishing cabin about an hour ago. He's singing like a bird in custody, trying to cut a deal. Jolene's face collapsed. He wouldn't. He promised. Honor among thieves. Baker shook his head. First thing he did was turn on you. Said the whole thing was your idea. That you stood to gain the most from your husband's death. That's a lie. Jolene's voice rose to a shriek. He was the one in debt. He needed the money. So you admit you knew about the plan? The sheriff's question was quiet but devastating. Jolene realized her mistake too late. She looked around desperately, but the circle of accusing faces was complete. No way out. Jolene Mercer, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and identity theft, Sheriff Baker said formally. You have the right to remain silent. As the deputies moved to handcuff her, Jolene's eyes locked with Silas's one last time. In them, he saw not remorse or regret, but fury. Fury at being caught, at having her plans destroyed, at losing everything she'd schemed for. This isn't over, she hissed as they led her away. Yes, Silas replied quietly. It is. 3 days after Jolene's arrest, Silas visited his auto shop for the first time since the accident. With Miss Adeline's key, he entered through the back door, the familiar smells of oil and metal bringing a rush of memories. The shop was exactly as he'd left it that night, tools laid out for the next day's work, paperwork stacked neatly on his desk, the coffee maker cleaned and ready for morning. Like a museum exhibit of his interrupted life, that on the wall hung a framed photo of Silas and his father at the shop's grand reopening after James had expanded the business. Both men smiling, arms around each other's shoulders, grease-stained but proud at a life Jolene had dismissed as inadequate, as boring, as beneath her aspirations. 2 weeks later, the preliminary hearing confirmed what the evidence had already made clear. Lennox had accepted a plea deal, testifying against Jolene in exchange for a reduced sentence. Jolene, still proclaiming her partial innocence, would face full trial. "What happens now?" Wren asked as they left the courthouse together. "Now I rebuild," Silas said simply. Over the following months, piece by piece, that's exactly what he did. With the recovered assets from the accounts Jolene had hidden, plus a small business loan from the bank that had known his family for decades, Silas expanded Mercer Auto Repair. Boone became his partner, his military precision a perfect complement to Silas's mechanical expertise. Together, they hired Jamie Parker, a young veteran with a prosthetic leg, but natural talent with engines that Lowe stopped by regularly. Her friendship with Silas deepening into something neither of them rushed to define, but both valued deeply. That Jolene's trial ended with the verdict everyone expected: guilty on all counts. 12 years, with possibility of parole after 8. Justice served, if imperfectly. The day of Jolene's sentencing, Silas stood before the judge at the victim impact statement portion of the hearing. "Your Honor, I will be brief," he said, his voice steady. "The defendant and I shared 12 years of marriage. For most of those years, we built a life together that had meaning and value. That fact doesn't excuse what happened later, but it is the truth." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I cannot forgive the actions that brought us to this courtroom. The betrayal, the violence, the calculated effort to take my life for financial gain. These things must have consequences. But I also recognize that sentences serve multiple purposes. Punishment, yes, but also rehabilitation. I ask the court to consider both." It wasn't forgiveness. Silas couldn't offer that authentically. But it was a recognition that living in anger wasn't sustainable. That acknowledging the whole truth, the good and the bad, was the only way forward. 6 months after Jolene's sentencing, spring arrived in Elbridge with a burst of green and the promise of renewal. Silas stood in front of his newly expanded shop, watching as Boone and Hugo secured the sign above the entrance. Mercer and Company. Auto Repair. "Looks good," Lowe said, joining him on the sidewalk. Her shift at the hospital had ended early, allowing her to make the small ceremony Silas had planned for the reopening. Inside, the shop hummed with activity. Boone worked on a transmission rebuild, his steady presence an asset Silas valued beyond measure. In the third bay, Jamie Parker moved confidently around an engine despite his prosthetic leg. Wren arrived with Miss Adeline, who insisted on attending despite the spring chill aggravating her arthritis. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," the elderly woman declared. "Your daddy would be so proud, Silas." When everyone had assembled, Silas cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. A year ago, I wouldn't have believed this day was possible. But here we are, thanks to each of you." He looked around at the faces that had become his true family. Mercer and Company isn't just a name. It represents a community that refused to let lies win over truth. People who stood by me when standing seemed impossible. For a place beside him, Lowe squeezed his hand, briefly a gesture that had become familiar over the months as their friendship deepened into something more. "This shop will honor that spirit," Silas continued. "We'll train veterans returning to civilian life. We'll serve this community with the same integrity my father taught me. And we'll never forget that rebuilding is always possible, no matter how broken something might seem." Sheriff Baker raised a paper cup of champagne. To Mercer and Company, he toasted. "Built, broken, rebuilt." To Silas, Wren added, her eyes bright with unshed tears of pride. "The brother who showed us all what resilience really means." Later, as the gathering dispersed and the afternoon light began to fade, Silas walked through the shop alone. He ran his hand over the tools he'd reclaimed from the house he no longer lived in. touched the photograph of his father that now hung in the expanded office, studied the new sign visible through the window. Mercer and Company, illuminated by the setting sun. He had kept his vow to his father, after all, never walking away from his responsibilities, even when fulfilling them required traveling through darkness to reach the light beyond. The door opened behind him. Lo stood in the entrance, her smile cautious but warm. "Thought you might want company," she said. "Unless you're busy being reflective and profound." Silas laughed, the sound easy and genuine. "I think I've hit my profundity quota for the day. Company sounds good." As they left together, Silas didn't look back over his shoulder at the shop. He didn't need to. It would be there tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days to come, a testament to what could be built from the ashes of destruction. A promise kept, a life reclaimed, not just survived, but rebuilt, stronger than before.